This is important world news update as seen from Russia, December 2023. Among other important news today, there are America militarizing. Sudan is at war. American diplomat, legend passed away. Kazakhstan snubs Putin. Nepal warns Russia. And the biggest news of the week, Vladimir Putin is shown his place by Iran. Welcome to another world's news as seen from Russia update. Howdy friends, my name is Konstantin and welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Every Wednesday I give you Russian take on important world news. And let's jump straight to the news number one. And the first news of this past week comes from America. The head of Pentagon, Lloyd Austin, announced that the country has begun the largest modernization of its military-industrial complex in 40 years. Let me quote Austin. The United States is carrying out the most extensive modernization of the defense industrial base in recent decades. As the Minister of Defense clarified, the state will allocate about $50 billion for these purposes from additional budgets requested by the administration of Joe Biden, American president. That supposed to create and maintain tens of thousands of good jobs for Americans in more than 30 states. Well, this news is very obvious. It's expected. Russia goes mad, it goes rogue, it invades its neighbor, it starts a war, it threatens all countries in the world, saying it'll bring its Russian world to every corner of the globe. What would be the logical response? Every country would think how well it could defend itself against Russia. It would start modernizing weapons, defense systems, armies. NATO has modified its strategy, making Russia threat number one. So not only the USA, but all NATO countries will be modernizing their weapons, replacing everything, researching, spending tons of money. And what is said about that in Russia? Well, if you watch Russia closely, if you watch my streams every day, I think you'd know by now what they're saying. I bet you have an idea or two. You see what America is doing? Militarizing for no obvious reason. Because they're just evil satanists and they want to take over the world. Look at us, the peacemakers. We don't threaten anyone. We just want to spread the Russian world. Peaceful, nice Russian world, We'll bring it on the tanks. But look, we don't need to start militarizing. We don't need another weapons race. We need weapons only to defend ourselves. And look what evil America is doing. Oh, and Ukraine? Well, we didn't start the war in Ukraine. They started it. We're trying to end it. To me, Russian reaction isn't outrageous anymore. I'm so used them calling white black and vice versa. It's gotten old. I consider their response the Russian new normal. Let's move on to the next news. Interesting news came from the Middle East and Africa. Russia wants to return weapons that it sold to Middle Eastern and African countries. The Kremlin is negotiating to return military defense systems that Russia exported to Pakistan and Egypt. The reason? Well, the reason is obvious. Russia needs everything it can get its hands on to be used in Ukraine. In the recent months, a mission of Russian officials visited Cairo, that's the capital of Egypt, and asked Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to return more than 100 engines from Russian Mi-8 and Mi-17 attack helicopters that it sold in the past to Egypt. The rumors have it that President Sisi agreed, and supplies will begin soon. In return, Egypt will receive free wheat. That's a commodity that Egypt needs a lot and buys a lot. And Egyptian national debt to Russia will be forgiven. Well, it's wrong to say that the debt will be forgiven. It'll be paid for by Russian taxpayers. They'll pick up the bill. But there's a catch here. And it's Russia's first. Russia supplies the wheat. Russia forgives the debt. Then, and only then, the Egyptians will release the helicopter's engines back. In the future. Some time from now. Possibly. Half of the amount of the engines. Perhaps. Maybe. And only Allah knows. Only if Allah allows it. That type of thing. That's a very polite way of showing middle finger. Egyptian style. And what the Russians are saying? Newspapers, propaganda, TV, anything? Well, nothing. They are keeping it secret. They don't want its taxpayers to know what they're doing behind people's backs. They don't want to know that the taxpayers will pick up the bill of the debt that Egypt owns to the people of Russia. They don't want to do that. They're just keeping silence. They're very good at that. Moving on. The next news comes from Sudan. Have you heard of Sudan? That's a country. Do you know where it is? In Africa, south of Egypt. Do you know what's going on in Sudan? What has been going on for quite some time? No? Sudan has been at war for 7 past months. Tens of thousands were killed. Millions of refugees have fled all over. A tragedy is happening. But have you seen mass protests on the streets of cities in Europe or the United States? Perhaps you heard the United Nations expressing concerns. Have you heard of United Nations Secretary General Guterres saying anything about humanitarian disaster happening in Sudan? Have you even heard of this war? Have you even read about it anywhere in the media, in the newspapers? Did you see it on TV in your countries? I bet no. It's because Muslims are killing each other there. There are no Jews in Sudan. Therefore, Erdogan does not shout. The Arab world is not outraged, far from it. The Western leftists do not care. Islamist activists on social media do not shed crocodile tears over it, over murders of Sudanese children. And even the Dagestanians, they don't look for Sudanese in airplane turbines. They don't give a damn. They don't care about millions of lives. This is ironclad proof that all the wild howling about Gaza is generated by a single thing: anti-Semitism. Before you protest about Gaza Strip, first protest about the war in Sudan. Then go to Gaza. Moving on. In Kazakhstan, a man who fought in ЧВК Wagner was imprisoned. He's sentenced almost 7 years in prison. And the reason for that? Well, merely participating in the war against Ukraine. Let me give you a little bit of details. The court of Kazakhstan sentenced Alexei Shompolov, 34-year-old resident of Karaganda region, to 6 years and 8 months in prison for participating in the war against Ukraine as a part of Russian private army called ЧВК Wagner. Shompolov was found guilty of mercenary activities and of committing a grave criminal offense against the peace and security of mankind. And oh my gosh, the Kazakhstan court is so on target about that. They're so spot on. The court qualified his actions as aimed at overthrowing or undermining the constitutional order or violating the territorial integrity of a state. Oh my God, the Kazakhstan court is so much spot on that. The mercenary, this guy was also fined 205,000 rubles, Russian rubles. That's everything that he was able to bring after serving to Kazakhstan. According to the court, the money were confiscated. They were obtained by criminal means. And, oh my God, the Kazakh court is spot on again. Shompolov admitted his guilt and repented. Kazakh, people, I want to make a statement. Oh, Kazakh court, the ones who made this decision, who carried out sentence, I think you're absolutely great. This case was investigated by the Department of National Security Committee for Karaganda region. The court first instance handed down the verdict back in August, and the Court of Appeal approved it on November 15th. Now this guy is off to serve almost 7 years. Russian Z-patriots are outraged. I say, bravo, Kazakhstan. Bravo, Kassym-Jomart Kemelyevich Tokayev. I, contrary to Vladimir Putin, say his name correctly. Bravo. For a change, justice has been served. And let's move on to the next news. We'll jump to Switzerland. What a fantastic place. Switzerland has frozen Russian assets worth of 8.8 billion American dollars. The reason? Well, the international sanctions. Nothing is known about what the Swiss are going to do with that money next. Again, Russian Z-patriots are outraged. They can't do that. It's illegal. It's a theft. They just stole Russia's money. Is it a theft? Z-patriots, are you absolutely sure about that? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's a compensation for numerous washing machines and toilets stolen from the Ukrainians in the Ukrainian cities. Huh? Perhaps compensation? No? I say, good people of Switzerland, please take that Russian money and use them as you find necessary. I, Russian taxpayer, am giving you my permission. That's partially my money too. I have complete faith in you. Law-abiding, decent Swiss. Go for it. Moving on. And now it's time for some news from Southeast Asia. The banks in Laos have started accepting bank cards issued by Russian payment system Mir. Not all the banks, just a few of them, and just for a limited time as experiment. And what does Russian propaganda say about that? Woohoo! A complete and undeniable victory for Russia. The evil satanic West is defeated once and for all. The entire world is embracing Russia. The Russian world is expanding. Now Russians can travel to Laos and use their cards issued by Russian banks in Russia. Whoa. It's just a proof we're doing the right thing. Everything is going according to the plan. Folks, do you even know where Laos is? To me, it's a very dubious victory of the Russian world. Hey, you don't know anything. What do you know? You know nothing. You traitor of Russian people, they say. And they're right. I don't know much. I just know that if you invade your neighbor and start killing innocent people, you are screwed. all over the world, in Laos or not Laos or anywhere else. The only place they can even just look at you, and a few places, not all, is a place like Laos. And by the way, Laos is a country northeast of Thailand, completely covered by the jungle, population of 7.7 million people. Let's move on. Argentina will not join BRICS. The country's future foreign minister Diana Mondino announced. Et tu, brute? Oh, Argentinians, not traitors. You no good bombs, backstabbed us. You not going to join BRICS. You can't even play football well. Team Russia will beat you anytime. Again, Z-patriots are absolutely outraged. Oof. Argentina was supposed to join BRICS. At least that's what the previous president was saying. And now they will not. Well, you know what? I'm taking my American popcorn, supersized, Uzbek style, and this isn't popcorn. It's buckwheat. Oh, it says American popcorn, you know. There you go. But inside, Misha, my son, ate all the popcorn and put buckwheat here. Kids, let's move on. Didn't work out as planned. Sorry. By the way, if you're liking today's news update, please help me spread it by making reposts in your social media accounts. That helps me a lot. Thank you. And you might consider hitting that like button too. Moving on. Sad news came from the USA, Connecticut. Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who saw detente between the USSR and the United States, passed away. I remember that very well. Anyway, he died at the age of 100 at his home. Kissinger was the first national security advisor and Secretary of State under President Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford from January 1969 to January 1977. That's 8 years. The guy was larger than life. You know, we at the USSR knew his name very well. I was barely a few years old, but I knew who Henry Kissinger was. He was considered an enemy. Well, he was American, but everyone respected him in the USSR and sympathized. He was, I don't know, a likable guy. He was a real politician and statesman. I read his books. I studied his works at college, at Russian college, and in American college, and I think that guy was larger than life. Rest in peace, Mr. Kissinger. Russian propaganda? Well, they've been silent about his death. Just one mention in the news, that's all. Moving on. Now we're gonna jump up high to the mountains. The world's tallest, highest mountains. Nepal. In Nepal, suspects of recruiting people to participate in Russian-Ukrainian war on the side of Russia have been arrested and charged with committing crime. We are discussing this cause with government prosecutors and will take it to court. Kathmandu's district police chief Bhupendra Khatri was quoted saying, "The policeman noted that 10 suspects are charged with human smuggling and participation in organized crime." And they're spot on. That's what it is, organized crime. The Nepalese Foreign Ministry called on Moscow to stop recruiting citizens of the country to participate in Russia's war. This news is to the ones who claim that everything is going swell in Ukraine for Russia. Everything is going according to the plan. There is no mobilization going on. Everything is fine. In reality, they are desperate for people. Despite the massive secret mobilization that has been continuing in Russia, they search for people everywhere, all over the world, even in Nepal, for goodness sake. And they get busted. And that's not the first time. First, they got busted in Cuba, and it was an international scandal, and now they got busted in Nepal. I wonder who's next. Oh. If at this point you're asking yourself, how can I help this channel? That's easy. Hit the like button, that helps a lot. Or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or become channel's patron at patreon.com. Either way would be very appreciated, would be fantastic. The links are down below, thank you. Or you can buy me a tea like this at buymeacoffee.com. And the last news of the week happened today in Abu Dhabi, in Saudi Arabia, and tomorrow they will happen in Moscow, in the Kremlin. Russian President Vladimir Putin visited Abu Dhabi, where he met with country's head Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. This event was important for two reasons. First reason is the PR effect inside Russia. It's actually very serious stuff I'm going to be talking about. In 1 week exactly from now, an important event will happen in Russia. Vladimir Putin will announce that he will run for another term. I am pretty sure of that. He will announce he will go for 6 more years. Like he hasn't had enough, Only 23 years, 6 more years, it'll make it 29. And I'm pretty sure if he stayed alive at the year 29, he would address the nation and he would say, hey, it's just a warm-up. So December 14th is the day. A very important decision. Well, the decision has been made. I'm pretty sure of that. It's just going to be an announcement. So Vladimir Putin needs good publicity now. As much good publicity as he can get. As a matter of fact, he has started showing up everywhere in the Russian news, in the Russian media, in the Russian informational space. In the last few days, he's been all over. Okay, his name is mentioned 25 times per day everywhere. Quite a striking difference from early this year when Moscow was being massively attacked by the drones, when ЧВК Wagner declared mutiny and moved on to Russia. He was nowhere to be found. He ejected himself from Russian public political space, and it seemed like he was losing control, he's slipping, becoming weak and is going to be torn apart soon, okay? So now he's trying to make up. An international visit is just what he needs. Let me remind you, Vladimir Putin is charged with war crimes. He is wanted by the world. Everyone wants to send him to Hague. Countries like Kyrgyzstan and South Africa warned him that if he flies there, that they will arrest him and, send him to the Netherlands. There's a handful of countries that he can go to now. China, North Korea, Kazakhstan, and the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia are among them. This visit to Abu Dhabi is a message to the Russians. You see, I fly anywhere I want to, like an eagle. And the second important reason is international respect. Vladimir Putin has zero international respect. He's hated all over the world. He's compared to Hitler, even in the countries like India and Thailand. I'm not even mentioning in the Western countries where he's considered Satan himself. So he tries to get any amount of respect that he can get to boost his credibility both inside Russia and abroad. Today, when he visited Abu Dhabi, Vladimir Putin was given a show. Let me show you. Well, you get the idea. It was quite a show. It was like a circus, you know. Planes, well, first of all, his airplane was accompanied by two Russian jet fighters, Su-35S, all the way from Moscow to Abu Dhabi. And it wasn't just for the show. I think he's really afraid for his safety. That's why he's surrounded by fighter jets with full ammunition, you know, live. So he was greeted with much fanfare. There were planes flying over and putting Russian colors into the air. There were cannons shooting. There was a bunch of dancing, I guess, you know, and all of that. The picture was really good. The picture for Putin, the picture was perfect. But if I was Putin, I'd be cautious. The Arabs are excellent negotiators and very sly ones too. They greet you like a king, and when you turn around, they have you. Well, you know what, I don't care, that's Putin's problem. The interesting thing is that right after the United Arab Emirates trip, it didn't last long, just for a couple hours, Putin flew to Saudi Arabia for a quick visit. A stopover, so to speak. He had a brief meeting with the king of Saudi Arabia and left off to Moscow. Again, very brief discussion for a couple hours. They must have discussed oil, situation, markets, and so forth. And amazingly enough, he was allowed to visit Saudi Arabia and he was allowed to visit Abu Dhabi. After these two one-day visits, very, very brief trips, guess who knocked on Putin's door? Unexpectedly. Iran. Iranian president will pay Putin an unexpected visit. When asked today why Iranian president flying to Moscow, Dmitry Peskov didn't know what to say, and that guy always knows what to say. He always finds his way out of uncomfortable questions. Well, he couldn't this time because visits like this by the heads of big countries, important countries, and Iran is definitely a key player in the region, okay? The visits, they don't happen unexpectedly. The presidents don't just drop by. The visits are planned way in advance, and tomorrow, on December 7th, there will be a drop-by. And a pretty rude one, too. I think Iran now is a master of Russia in some twisted way. Well, figure this. Iran has been supplying weapons to Russia, so Russia is using it against Ukraine. It's been done in secrecy, so Iran has, it can blackmail Vladimir Putin. Now, Iran and Russia definitely conspired to do something about Israel and Hamas war. Iran also has blackmail material about Putin. So, in some twisted way, I think that Iran controls Putin to some extent. And Putin's visits to the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, and Saudi Arabia were not taken lightly by Iran. I remind you, Iran and Saudi Arabia, Iran and UAE are enemies. Shia and Sunni Muslims. Iran is an enemy of everyone, even inside the Arabic world. Iran, tomorrow, in the very heart of Moscow, in the Kremlin, will show Vladimir Putin his place. What a geopolitical genius Putin is, you know. Unbelievable. Iranians come to your home unexpectedly, rudely, any time they want, and they show you where your place is. 6 more years, huh? All right, we'll see what happens. And this is it for the world's news today. I suggest now you go check another video made documenting how I was leaving Russia in a hurry, running away from Putin, KGB, and everyone else. So the link is right here. Check it out. And I'll see everyone tomorrow with a regular message. Thank you. Carthago delenda est.